Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Hi, Eric. Good morning. Well, good time of day.
Yeah, definitely morning. So
Uh,
not as early morning as you.
that's
I think
okay.
you're West Coast, right?
Oh, yeah, well, I've been working for 2 hours already, so.
Yeah, same. I'm East Coast, so it's 9
There you
a.m.
go.
and been working for about 5 hours now.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay, so I saw you made some comments on our Alex. Hi. Let's see. I'm going to do my usual.
Oh yeah, on the
Um,
GitHub.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. No, I'm just gonna put meeting minutes into the chat, so
Got it.
for
Yep.
your convenience. And I just apologize. This week is I've done less work on this area than I usually do because it's Innovation Week at work and I'm knee deep in prototype code.
I understand that.
So I'm putting the folks, but update your.
Yep.
Alrighty. So I'm just going to give people a couple more minutes to uh, show up, and also I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can start looking into the contents of. Right, there we go. So I'm kind of looking forward to finishing this part because IETF is certainly important to us, but it's actually technically it's the least exciting of the
hmm
things ahead of us. Also, probably, frankly, the least challenging. This is more of a, as I see it, a political exercise to get on IETF good graces and get accepted in that system. But that is just the first battle. The real deal will be to get effectively commercially implemented in some way, shape, or form. By this means, we're successful when we see implementations of our ideas start coming out of Google and Microsoft and maybe IBM, Oracle, whoever chooses to um, adopt them. This is why if you work for one of the big companies, um, you know, talk to your decision makers. Yeah, without it, this is not going to be successful. And if this is not successful, then uplift of existing applications onto confidential computing is simply not going to happen. That's as I see it. I could be wrong.
I would agree with that. At
Okay.
least not from a standardization fashion.
Well, I mean, as I said, like I've worked at Microsoft for 23 years, and I have to say, even though some of those roles are program management roles, you don't see the customer as the customer sees the customer. So now that I'm on the consumer side of the fence, I can attest that you basically, like when you have 5,000 applications, um, and somebody says, well, your data access paradigm is going to change, then your response is, well, I'm not going to do it. All right. Your payroll application accesses your payroll database over TLS, and that's that. You're not going encrypting data in your payroll database for your trusted execution environments that might access it. It's not happening. So,
Right.
yeah. All right. So let's get started. Thank you, everyone who joined. Please note yourself in the meeting minutes. Hank, you already have your hand up. Hello.
Yeah, hi, sorry for that. Yeah, my dear friend from Microsoft is not here today. We hogged the item of platform binding,
Hmm.
and we are now working with made up but colloquial and relative intuitive like stickiness of a workload to a platform and such to elaborate some dimensions to the problem. I think we identified at least three dimensions. We're working on it.
Hmm.
But as this the weeks with the 20s will be a bad week for the US. The last week was a relative typical vacation week in Europe. So
Hmm.
that's maybe why he's not here today.
Is
And
there a week in
so
Europe that's not a typical vacation week? I'm just kidding.
oh, you got us there. You got us there. Yeah, we are lazy and never work. So that's actually true. And so I'm just highlighting that there is progress. And we are, we probably will not run a lot of merge conflicts because we are working on an empty section that's a header. So,
Okay.
so I think that when merging it, even if we are a little bit late, will not be a merge problem, more like of a content discussion problem. And that's my very quick early report on
Right.
the platform
So
binding.
this is what I'm getting out of this. For the informational draft, should we have some paragraph in the draft, again, for ATF that talks about platform binding of workload identity?
I think is absolutely necessary. This is
Okay.
where the
Yeah, I agree
problem
with you. I
stems
Yes,
just
from
want,
for
yeah,
confidential compute. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right.
100% necessary.
So shall we jump in?
Please.
Okay. I guess how do you want to do this? We just basically scroll through, we comment on the text. Hopefully we'll get through all of it today. I'm particularly interested at this point in time that folks start reading it beginning to end to see if it reads right, that there are no warts in it, that nothing uh, sticks out in ways that would drive the audience away or you know certainly shouldn't be saying anything that's wrong, but also, if it's excessively repetitive or if it's internally conflicted in some way, or it has information that doesn't belong. Like sometimes you hurt your case by saying too much. Look for all of those things. And again, at this point in time, we're effectively in the final polish mode. So we have until July 7th, but it's I'm hoping that we're going to do a lot less towards the end. So now is the time to get it all right. So we already have the content. So um, okay, so let's just basically go paragraph. Right now I'm looking 51, 52 here. I'm happy with this text. I'm ready to move forward to 57. But like now is a good time to speak up if there's something you feel is wrong. Right. So unless I hear something, I'm going to basically
Yeah, agreed.
proceed. All right. So I just want to make sure privacy enhancing is usually not hyphenated. So it's tiny thing. Can I just commit this?
Yep.
Sure.
Um, okay, we're up to 58 now. No. Machine learning. So up to 72 now. I'm just like basically scanning the text.
Yeah, I made a note, I think I did. Yeah, so there's a side feature in Markdown that I think been used in this. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually with Yogesh. I think 76 needs to be deleted. I think we should basically say, like, up to this point, we should delete that. And we say confidential computing for it. Like, there is no point admitting that, you know, and I really don't think that, yeah, we
That is
should
the
be
case,
focused on it.
actually. Yeah.
So let's
Fine.
delete that.
Yeah, we shouldn't diminish our self-representation. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm adding a comment and I'm just going to commit that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now here, it's just going to
You just
refresh
need a
my
slight
line.
correction there. Yeah.
It's going to refresh my line. And so this we need to change. It's not like, okay, so confidential computing can address these weaknesses.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's all more generic, right? So you're just, that's fine. All these German weasel words like 99% yes instead of yes don't really matter in this text. That is
But
just
can we say
sometimes it's
confidential
habit.
computing can close these gaps?
Yeah, can. Can is fine. This is not will. Will is
Well,
definitive.
it can if
Can
you use
is
it correctly.
Exactly.
exactly.
Okay.
Can is fine.
All right. Making good progress here. All right. So I wanted to remove the data and use protection. Like, let me explain this. The critical downstream effects was my wording from an earlier document. In that document, what I was saying is we were focusing on data and use protection. And really, what we should be protecting is credentials of a workload. And if you put workload in a place where credentials are protected, data and use is also protected, and that effectively becomes a downstream effect of having trustworthy workload identity. But here, this wording sticks out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's why I want to basically remove this line.
Yep.
So that's okay?
I think
Or
so.
we can reword it in some other way, but this is no longer
Yeah, I think I
critical to what
just
we're
inherited. Yeah, I think I just inherited that line. So this can go.
Okay, cool. And we continue. Thank you, GitHub, for refreshing. All right, we're up to here. Workload, running instance of software executed in support of a specific purpose. Is that the whimsy definition? Can you look it up real quick, because we should
That's an excellent point. I was trying to go away from, or move away from the phrasing, but go to a dictionary phrasing.
I would much rather
And
say whimsy defines workload as blah, and then we say
no. We start with our definition, and then we go. Whimsy has a more extensive definition. I think that's how dictionaries would do it, right? You would never expect not to see the definition first.
Yeah, you'd expect to see the primary definition and then, you know, any colloquialism or additional definition as a
So
subtext.
what I originally said, I believe, there was some text where I said that the definition, like we define workload, or I guess how did I say that? Well, never mind. How do you want to say it now? Because we need to preserve the fact that it's an instance of software executing for a particular specific purpose. We should preserve whimsy text.
Yeah, sorry. But that is so. Then every process is. What I learned in 101 computing science ages ago is that a process is a program in execution, which means that your definition matches every executable that is being executed ever. That is a workload. I'm not entirely sure that's true. If that's the whimsy definition, we can highlight that it's basically telling you if I run Fortnite, I'm a workload. That's fine. I'm not entirely sure that's what I'm going to say here. I think we need a specific execution environment like a Docker realm, like a trusted execution environment or something at least. And they don't even think that. No, maybe I don't know if the
So
Docker realm is our workload target, right?
I wanna hear what Peter has to say, and I also have some thoughts.
Sorry.
So Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll comment from a Whimsy perspective, Hank. The intent in Whimsy is that we do address all running workloads, including Fortnite or whatever, right? If you have a more narrow definition of what you think is a workload, that's fine. But the Whimsy definition is purposefully broad that way.
Okay. So basically, the whimsy definition is a synonym to process
I don't care.
in computing science.
Honestly,
I
honestly, Hank, I don't care. That is how Whimsy defined it. I'm not going to get into an academic discussion over it. If you want to reference the Whimsy thing, this is the way to do it.
I
Wonderful.
like
Okay.
instance of software because to me, sometimes I would like to take an aggregate view of software and not really care for purposes of identifying it, what its composition is, because that's a function of whoever issued the credential to it. So instance of software is sufficiently precise and sufficiently all-encompassing. However, we need to basically make it clear that we like that. It's good to have an instance of software running for a specific purpose, so we should match the word of whimsy to indicate alignment. And I would like to further say that we're restricting it just a bit to we're only considering the parts of the workload that are subject to remote workload and configuration that is subject to remote attestation. Because if we can't attest it, then we can't identify it. And this whole point of trustworthy workload identity, like for us, like for workload to have a trustworthy identity, we need to be able to attest it.
Yeah, that really depends on what we want to say. If we are saying the PID in Linux kernel is a workload identifier, we are golden. If that is a good example that aligns with the definition, we are good. And I think Whimsy's definition allows for that. And that's fine. We just have to be aware and be okay. And then we move with that.
So again, we need to say something here. What is that? And I do believe that we should reuse Whimsy definition of workload before we restrict it. Like I understand what you said about the dictionary, but here we're basically trying to produce a narrative that people can relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will also be a 0-0, so some things can be tweaked later.
So
which is also
this
fine.
is what I would like. I would like to say again. This is my proposal, and then let's see if we can move past this. I basically say Whimsy defines workload as this. We further restrict that definition to the portions of a workload that are subject to remote attestation.
In general, that makes sense to me. I will have to look at it in 2 minutes.
Can somebody just pick up the definition of Whimsy architecture, like so I don't have to do it, and then I would simply change this. And then there is a Whimsy thing that I can say, oh. Okay, I'm just going to type it in here. Okay, can I say that? I guess
Yeah, I
I'm not.
think so.
Yeah, that looked
Right.
good.
And then I will delete this.
One question mark on the just line 94 you edited. Workload is as an instance of software executing for a specific purpose.
Yes.
Hence, we restrict the definition of the portion of the software. Okay, it's a
Restrict
portion.
that definition. Yes. Mhm.
So portion of the software is the running
Of the
instance of the
software instance or yeah, we can say
instance. Yes, yes.
software instance. Okay.
Yeah, I think you should correct it to instance. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then I want to, so I'll commit this. And then I would delete this because it's repetitive.
Yeah.
Okay. We are about a third through the document, and we're about a third through our allotted meeting time. But we'll probably need to speed it up a little bit anyway. All right. Let's see, where are we? Wait. Just trying to figure out what comments are we skipping over. Oh, that's what we did. We defined workload. Workload identifier. What are we here? Eric, this is your comments. Let's understand what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, so I think that the whimsy discussion around workload identifier is a little weak in terms of how an identifier is referenced, right? So I don't see much, or I haven't read much in terms of, continuous versus random workload identifiers. And that's what I was looking at calling out. Do we want to establish a baseline for something of that nature, right? Do we want to say, okay, we a continuous workload identifier will allow us to maintain kind of that governance over, the workload and the life cycle of workload.
Yeah. So what I'm doing right now, you can
Mm-hmm.
see my screen, is I'm going into our charter because we spent some time and we talked about these terms and their meaning. And the workload identifier here is a stable construct of which relying parties can form long-lived workload authorization policies. So it's not just, so when I say it's a stable identifier, it just means that the things that go into that construct can change, but the construct itself remains stable, so you don't break your relying parties unless
Okay.
you really did change the identifier of the workload, right? So, I'm Mark, and if I eat a banana, I'm still Mark,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
But maybe,
Or if I migrate, or if I do something else.
yeah, right. So my identifier might actually be part of my identifier might be that I'm cited for purposes of being a pilot. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if I eat a banana, my identifier didn't change, but if I lose a left eye, identifier may actually change because then relying party will treat me differently. So it needs to be stable to the extent that your relying party will continue placing trust in you in a way that's agreed between whoever issues the credential and whoever consumes it. So this is why I would like to preserve this. I'll even
Yep.
copy it here. And we can have a discussion, of course, in the document here. But here we say, what do we say? It's a stable construct in support of relying parties' long-term workload authorization policies.
Mhm.
So how does that compare to what we said here? Stable construct, which relying parties, around which relying parties can form long-lived workload authorization policies. I would prefer this wording, actually, not in
Yep.
support of. So I would say that. Just again, it aligns with the charter and it's kind of well thought out.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
I'm amenable to that.
Where's workload identifier again?
Also, a principal decision. Am I audible? I'm not sure because I changed devices. I might not be audible. Okay.
You
Yeah,
are
we can
very
hear you.
audible.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can hear you,
Okay.
Hank.
So yeah, because I never know. It's technology. I think it's a principal decision to say, if you said if the relying party is now viewing me in a different light, I'm taking on the individual of an instance workload right now, then my identifier changes or not.
Correct. So you
yeah,
don't change
yes.
the identifier of the workload unless you intend to break relying parties. Or like
That's
change their
good.
behavior,
Okay,
not break.
that sounds different. Okay.
So we can put a clarify here because this is just a definition. But if we want to put like a little clarification, I don't know what the good place for that is because this is a straight up definition section.
Yep.
So I'll keep it like that. But we should explain, you know, why what is the extent of that stability.
Yeah, I agree. But if this
Yeah.
is not the section for that, totally understand.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Workload identity now. So going back to Eric, what you said, can I resolve this conversation or do you want to go over that again?
No, I think you can resolve it. I think I want to identify where it's better suited. Because it's not in the definition section, obviously. So
Okay. Well, there is going to be a record of it here. So if you want to
You can create an issue from a comment. Maybe that's
would you
something
like
you
to
want to
create
do.
an issue from a comment, Eric, and then follow up with this?
I would.
Okay. Sounds good.
So
So this is going to be okay. How about I say we will resolve this issue once we have coverage of this identifier concept that makes us happy somewhere in the
perfect.
document. Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty. Now I have to go back to now where are the files? I need to go back to where my files changed. Wait, help me again. Where do I find the go? Oh, there it is. Okay, it's finally
Yep.
showing to me. All right, so we closed that issue. And now I can resolve.
Yes, correct.
All right. Sweet. Where are we now? Workload identifier, stable construct. Workload identity. The definition of workload identity is identical to the definition by Whimsy. We should change that. Okay. So I'll just say that. Can I come in then?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Workload credential. It's shaping up nicely. Workload, identity, workload credential, ephemeral identity document containing the workload identifier and a number of additional claims that can be short-lived, long-lived, and that is used to represent and prove workload identity relying party. I like that. So again, speak up if you don't like something. Now is a good time. Workload provenance, a linkage between the workload credential and the trusted entity responsible for the production and remote attestation of a corresponding workload. So one, there is a little bit of a wording issue. When you say responsible, is it the entity that's responsible or the linkage is responsible?
Good point.
So it's unclear.
I think it's to me, it was a trusted entity that's responsible.
Okay, let's go back to the governance and see what we define provenance is. It's a linkage between the workload credential and a trusted entity. Responsible creation, termination. So is it the same text, isn't it?
I tried to not change text if it's possible and would work.
Yeah, it's the same text.
Okay, so perhaps this definition needs to change. And we can change it here first and then update the charter later, because this is more important immediately.
Yeah,
So,
it seemed muddied or unclear to me in the same way it did when you first read it. Like, who is responsible? I don't really understand that. Is it the linkage or is it the the vendor?
The phrasing issue remains. That's me. So that's my rephrasing that's created it, or maybe the original phrasing. Yeah, I think that should be more clear. A link between the workload credentials where a trusted entity, example, is responsible for the production and or tralala. Which now would disambiguate that.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, I'm going to start ad-libbing and then maybe we can produce a better version here. Really, it's a portion of workload credential. So provenance is a part of the workload credential that perhaps didn't exist there before, but the function of which is to help a relying party or an auditor to understand to
verify, right?
To get at
to apprise the trustworthiness.
To get at the evidence for of mechanisms and inputs used for its creation. Okay, it's a jumbled mess.
My point is, we said that we might want to just restrict to some kind of a provenance identity, right? Because
this is what I'm going to do so we can move forward. I'm just going to create an issue here, and it will be because again we're running out of time, and I want to make sure we cover the rest of this. And this is something we can discuss perhaps in email.
Yeah, makes sense.
On the issue.
Discuss
or in the GitHub issue tracker,
precise definition of lineage, and then update the charter with it. So that's what we're going to do.
And lineage and provenance are basically the same things we're talking about then, right?
Well, so lineage is what provenance helps you get.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So
we discussed that version, the difference. So we actually did the dictionary, like reference. We looked it up to see what should go. We decided that provenance is better. Perhaps we should define lineage and then provenance points at lineage or something like this. But again, I'm going to resolve this conversation because we have an issue.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Gap analysis. Wait, haven't we already had a gap analysis here? Just make sure. No. Okay.
You have stopped
Gap.
sharing, right, Mark?
Did
No,
I
I
stop
can
sharing?
it's
still
on
I
your
can
side.
still see a
I
share.
can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can see now. Yeah.
Okay. They're not risks, they're really issues. We shouldn't say risks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's a choice of my part, to be honest. Issues seemed it's fine. Yeah. I'm easily overruled here. That's no problem.
Well, let's not say
Um,
issues, let's find another word, but um,
I think issues is appropriate.
okay.
or shortcomings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shortcomings.
shortcomings is better, I think. Yeah. And I identified a small bug which in the subsequent comment, it should be not where. So you can mark my comment result, change it right here. Where your cursor is,
Yeah.
Mark, just next move it by one letter. It will following shortcomings were identified, not where identified.
Where. Yep.
Were.
Yeah.
The shortcomings were identified by gap analysis of the current Whimsy architecture.
Mm.
No, it doesn't matter who did it.
But it is good to say that which
well, we
was
could say
which umbrella under which we did this activity, right? So, or you have already covered it earlier, then I'm fine with
well,
removing it.
I'm more interested to say gap with what, right? So we can say there is a gap. Were identified by performing a gap analysis.
Yeah, performing a gap analysis.
Of the current Whimsy architecture against the requirements of the trustworthy workload.
This is good. Yes.
Yes, I like that a lot.
Against the requirements underlying trustworthy
The
workload identity.
Yeah. And in the bracket, you can always use TWI. Yeah. If you have used it earlier.
Okay, yeah.
Brilliant.
The gap analysis provides a basic to identify a basis for identifying.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe bad English.
That's fine. Extensions. Your English is better than my German.
I guess so.
Identifying extensions necessary to meet the level of the trustworthy network's confidential computing environment. And I don't know if I want colon here necessarily.
No, period.
Okay.
Yeah, because the next it now comes a list of itemized items. Yeah, a German habit to use a colon to move.
All right. All right, and here we're talking now about the following. All right, protection of credentials at runtime, key management dynamic environments, and insufficient runtime attestation. The risk that credentials in memory could be exposed if a workload's execution environment is compromised. The current solutions rely on traditional key management practices, which may not be good enough against sophisticated runtime attacks. A runtime can still be compromised, even if keys are securely managed. A compromised runtime can still leak. Similarly, secure runtime is less effective if key management is weak. Integrating. Okay, so what do you feel about these? By the way, I have to say one thing. This makes the reader think that getting a key out of an HSM is problematic, which it is, but it's unavoidable. This is how things are going to continue happening in a lot of cases. But the risk, of course, is that if the key release policy of an HSM would release the key to an entity other than the attested workload, which is again completely at the the mercy of whoever controls the policy, then the key could be compromised. it's simply unavoidable. What we're hoping to accomplish is that if you release it into the right environment, or if the environment attested key it generates itself, well, it doesn't leak from that anymore. So this is where I'm a little leery of going too much,
Into detail.
into key management specifically.
Yep.
Right. So protecting credential at runtime, I would like to keep. Key management at runtime in dynamic environments, I would remove, because we're not really addressing key management issues. If you do poor key management, well, God help you. And we didn't explain what dynamic environments are either. So that's going to
I think
bring fire.
yeah, this was existing text. Some of this was in existing text. I don't know why it doesn't show that way. It's
So
somewhere
maybe I
up.
can remove the key management here.
Yeah.
And you can, remove it. Yeah, exactly.
Potential of
And the comma,
credentials.
yeah.
And also, I want to only capitalize terms that we have as terms of art, which is insufficient is not a term. Runtime attestation, of course, is. Or, yeah. We wouldn't say lack of runtime attestation. It's really insufficient, because like the way Spiral attests by, extrospection of a workload by its hosting environment, it's
I think we can
insufficient.
select insufficient to a better word, right? Lack of
Well,
runtime
if I say lack
attestation.
of, then there is no, like, and I said, like, for instance, if you use Spiffy and then you use AWS to tell you what the image is, well, there is some attestation in that. It's just what I call the do-it-yourself dentistry attestation. And, push come to shove, you'll pull your own tooth. But it is, it's insufficient. It's not outright lack of. I don't want to be, discount some of the things that happen in work today.
So I think Yogesh's comment is we don't want to bash on Whimsy hard. That's not the goal. But
Correct.
if there is efficiency and that is our intermediate term for now, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I think that
bashing on
Yogesh
Whimsy
is
not the goal. The goal is to cooperate.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. Where are we? All right. So we can be exposed workloads environments compromised. So keep that. Traditional key management practice, which will not be good enough against physical. Like again, I will remove this line, because we're not really helping solve this problem. If you decide to continue moving, keep getting a key from an HSM, nobody seeks to stop you.
Yes, and the intention to use an HLM is obviously a good choice. It just has to happen in the try context in the right way.
Well, it's also if you have multiple sister workloads and you want to give each of them the exact same secret, which, face it, will continue to happen, then your key management is still a thing.
Yeah, it's still an issue.
Yeah. How are these two bullets different? Because we basically said there is protection of credentialed runtime and sufficient runtime attestation. So here we say, okay, protection. If your runtime environment is compromised, your credentials are gone. And then, I would say here, more importantly, is confidential computing doesn't trust the hosting environment and relies on the workload attesting itself. That's the actual issue.
Yeah. Again, but I didn't do in content changes. This is a content change, but I think it's better. Yeah.
Okay. Does not trust its hosting environment and relies on each workload attesting itself.
It's also easier to digest.
All right. All right. Let's go to the next one. So here we are. Token replay and misuse in cross-domain scenarios. Are they really just cross-domain or all scenarios?
I don't know.
I would think it's all scenarios. It's not just limited to cross-domain.
Should cross-domain be an example then? So because that's a tangible thing, people
It
really
is.
grasp.
Yeah, I do think it should be an example. Though I think it's relevant across all scenarios, not just
Mhm.
cross-domain. But
Good.
cross-domain would be a great example of a scenario we have today that we can reference.
Okay, so we'll just say token replay and misuse.
But if you're not using the example, would you add the example in your
We
commits?
can, yeah. We'll still work line by line.
Okay, okay, sorry.
So we
I
got
thought this
token
was the
replay and
line.
misuse. And even with proper token binding, the risk of replay attacks. Is it really like if token binding can help you? Like if you are sending the same token multiple times and that token, it's not validated. I don't like, what do you want to say here? Really what we're talking about is lack of token binding. So saying, you can have token binding and still be screwed, that's probably not the message we want to carry. So I would change
it would
this.
help, yeah.
This is what I would actually say. Token binding, even if used, is not sufficient unless the workload's credentials are protected from leakage. Or the secret underpinning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The secret underpinning that. Yeah, so we are changing the original text, which is great because it's in this change, and now we can see that. And that triggers the change. But this is a content change, which I think is in a good direction.
Now, what do you want to say about cross-domain scenarios here that's specific to this case? Is there anything that in cross-domain scenarios you meaningfully change?
The cross-domain was initially its own top-level itemized list item. And now we are pruning it a little bit. And
We
I
need
wouldn't
to
say anymore then.
okay, how about this? If you feel we need to speak about cross-domain, add an issue, we'll get to it. Right now, I want to mention that we mentioned protection of credentials at runtime and insufficient runtime attestation. We didn't say anything in the gap analysis about provenance. So I would say I would add an issue here. So I'm just going to add a comment and create an issue from the comment. We'll move on to it. Maybe we can, discuss over email and close it next time. All right. Yes, the gap analysis is not just protection of credentials at runtime. Okay, where are we? Integration of contextual computing into Whimsy. All right, so that's next session. We covered gap analysis. We say, all right, these are the gaps. Now we're saying secure key storage and cryptographic operations. With T's, okay, we're already asked to change that. So maybe I commit the suggestion just to change the text a little bit, and we can still review it. And I wouldn't just say host OS, I would also say the hosting environment, because it's not necessarily an operating system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can I commit the suggestion?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So here we are. Bootstrapping without a station. Strengthening. Okay, again, take a look at the change I suggested, just small. Can I commit this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it changes anything
Oh.
core to the issue.
Okay. Provenance. We should also say integrating into Whimsy should be provenance. And again, I already mentioned that we can probably do this at zero cost. Like if we can basically explain how an X509 like serial number is sufficient for whatever we do with provenance, because and this is just about this was another very important thing that I discovered last week. For those of you who didn't hear this, Whimsy is about using the credential. It's not about the issuance of the credential. So in Whimsy, we don't talk about the integration of verifier with ITP. All of that goes into the RATS working group or the attestation SIG. Here, we're going to specifically talk about this is how you use the credential. But if using the credential means referencing provenance and making some decisions based on the provenance, then it falls into the Whimsy.
I don't think it does. I think it doesn't. I think we leave that in rats to define that.
Provenance.
Yeah.
Oh no, how it's generated, how you go, what do you expect to do when you fetch it, that's fine. But ability to look at provenance from the relying party in order to make an authorization decision, that has got to be Whimsy, because Whimsy needs to carry this information. And again, if we can do this at zero cost, as in, JTI for a WIT or a serial number for X59 cert, we simply discuss this here and say, guys, don't change anything, but we're going to use it for this purpose. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Hold on. Mitigate or anti-compromise. What's going on? Hold on a second. Bootstrapping and then bootstrapping with attestation. Projects. What is this?
I don't know.
Any open source projects, maybe? Sorry,
Okay.
which one?
All right, this needs to be discussed because this is about the generation of credential, not about the carrying of credentials. So, we mentioned that, Whimsy can, like under confidential computing, Whimsy cannot trust the hosting environment any longer. That is important to carry. So as a result, we should be mentioning attestation at least a little bit. But what is this comment around Whimsy Archo 3?
I just retained it. I cannot comment on it, to be honest.
Okay, I'm going to create an issue. Yeah, I'm going to create an issue from that.
Yeah, I don't see any reference to projects in Archo 3.
Yeah, this is basically a node. So just imagine this project and project counter is a node that will not appear in the document. It just appears in a different markup style in renderers. That's why I
Okay.
use this syntax. So the project is just a label for the markup. It has to be done that way. Yeah, yeah.
Understood.
So another thing I want to do here is, so before we get to protected credential exchange, I'm just going to add a comment. Add. Cool. Come on. Doesn't want to resolve the conversation. Shh. All right, we're almost at the end of the hour. Time flies when you're having fun, huh?
Yeah.
Let's just see how much further. We need to go. Getting runtime compromise.
The other changes coming from you are uncontroversial.
There is a lot more here that looks duplicative. See, alignment of surgery with Whimsy architecture. We're already talking about it, introducing things into. So we're gonna run out of time, but it sounds like this. Like to me, the latter half of this document, like all this stuff, seems like highly duplicative, and we should like take a look. We should also do the security
but that's not
consideration.
part of this PR, right? So this PR didn't change that or
Yeah.
created it.
Right.
Just moved it.
Yeah, that could be a
So
separate
maybe we
discussion
should,
or separate pull request.
maybe we should now, commit some of these suggestions and then approve
So
the
that one is,
PR, and then we're going to do
yes,
another pass, like referencing the
exactly.
issues and with separate pull requests.
Okay.
That sounds good to me.
All right.
And I think
We'll
most
do this.
of your things are fine. Sorry, to be honest. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to do a lot of the work over email next week, and then again we'll meet. Hopefully we'll close it all up next week. If not, we still have another Tuesday on June 24th.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you all for coming today.
Yep.
Thank you for all your inputs, and I'll see you on the mailing list and next week on Tuesday.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.